Hello, and welcome to PRISM. PRISM is a design-oriented podcast hosted by me, Dan Harden. Like a glass prism that reveals the color hidden inside white light, this podcast will reveal the inside story behind innovation, especially the people that make it happen. My aim is to uncover each guest's unique point of view, their insights, their methods, or their own secret motivator, perhaps, that fuels their creative genius. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to PRISM. Today, I have great honor of being here with Branko Lukic, a good old friend of mine. Branko is presently at Logitech. You're a fellow at Logitech. And many of you may know him as being the founder and chief creative officer at Non-Object, a design firm that he founded 25 years ago. Was that
2006?
2006. I remember seeing some of your early work there, man. I was blown away. I always loved it. Always loved working with you. I worked with you at Frog.
Yes.
And we had a great time. So thank you for coming.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here today.
Branko, you have been an industrial designer. You're an experienced designer, user interface. You're studying software now. You're doing really interesting work at Logitech. We hope to hear about some of that. But more importantly, today, I just want to jam with you. I want to do what we've been doing for decades when you and I come together. We just talk about interesting topics that designers are intrigued by. Let's just riff on where has the industry been and where are we going? And I'm really intrigued about your thoughts on AI. There's so much being discussed about AI now. I mean, every time you open up the news, you see something else about ChatGPT affecting something, Midjourney, and all the different generative design programs that are coming out now. But, before we get into that topic, let's, how are you doing? And what's happening in your world of design?
That's a big question.
I like the big questions.
I'm doing great. A lot of experimentation, a lot of exploration in terms of where do we go, what's the limit of technology and design, exploring the limits of design as a practice, and how do we help people in the context of new planet situation where we are. How do we put even more meaning into what we do? Mm-hmm. How do we help people to the degree that's greater than just the product brief? Each product brief encapsulates a particular need, but then can you go beyond that? I think it's our duty to repair and help our environment, our planet.
Ever since I've known you, that's been your calling. I remember even hiring you back in, my God, when was
97.
that? 97? Yeah.
Sounds so distant now.
And your English was limited, but I saw the love in your eyes about design and people and the intensity that you had about design. Is that deep cause of doing meaningful work? Does that still resonate with you? Is this still something, and if so, why?
100%. It has probably shifted and changed over the years as I practice more the other sides of their beyond design, just practice and training of meditation. Mm-hmm. Has had a big impact on how do I see the world and how do I operate in this world. And it increased the understanding on certain aspects in a different way.
Why is that? Is it able to allow you to go deeper? Does it make you calmer? Does it unlock your creative potential? How has meditation helped you?
It's really interesting when you ask that question, because meditation is really helpful in removing the mind from the equation. And it's more about not doing anything. It's actually stopping all the activities, stopping the thinking. And when you think about every day, you move around, you go about, and there is our mind that is our operating system. And you look through your mind. Your mind is in between your consciousness and then the world you're seeing. So if you think about that, it becomes very clear quickly that this is almost like a lens you have. Mm-hmm. And then you see the world from the perspective of that software that you carry. That's like your human learning, HL. Mm-hmm. It's not machine learning, but your human learning is you as a human. And so then meditation is great because it calms and tames the unwieldy beast, which our minds are really not in our control. They're completely out of control. We like to believe that mind is in we're in control of our mind.
That's very true.
It's really interesting that how little control we have over the mind and the chatter that, all the different dialogues you have in your mind. So meditation is really great from that perspective. And calming is one of the after effects of meditation.
I find that it's very important when I'm really stressed out with trying to solve difficult problems. I see this on the staff all the time. Sometimes if you think about the problem too hard, it just won't come to you because there's a lot of chatter. It's sometimes a cacophony of information that is being thrown at you. As a designer, we've got this restriction, this constraint, we have these elements, and you're trying to solve so many things simultaneously on different levels. And I find that one of the keys to breaking through is to stop thinking so much about it, calm your mind, sometimes just be with the problem, just settle down, and after a little bit of time, it will come to you. Somehow the universe channels things to us on a creative front, and it's presented to you as like an opportunity that might come as a flash in front of your eyes and your proverbial eyes, your figurative eyes. And that's a moment, as a designer, you have to be aware of that serendipitous moment when something is presented to you almost from your unconscious, like a little mail that comes to you, like a little surprise. It might just be a little clue. That's a wonderful moment. And yeah, you're right. That usually happens, people say, oh, when you're in the shower, you think of things. Partly because your mind is calm. You're not thinking about the problem at hand. Creativity is funny that way. Do you think you can control that? Let's say the incoming ideas when you are creating, are you able to control it or provide at least the conditions where it more readily occurs?
It's really interesting how you asked that question with the word control in it. And I would like to answer no control. The point is that you don't want to control anything and you have to let go. And the meditation training is really focused on that, letting go of control. And that's hard to explain as a concept because I totally agree so many times, and even you and I talked about it many times, where you throw the idea, to back of your mind, eventually in few days' time or a certain period of time, a realization will come back after some processing from, we don't know where exactly, but from a larger mind, a more connected mind among all of us, whatever that is. I'm not going to go into that. It's not a voodoo chat. No, I'm right. Kind of in the voodoo mode or anything like that. But pause, delete.
I want to hear
stuff,
about voodoo mode. That's interesting.
No. Pause that. Delete all the like voodoo stuff. Where in the meditation process, you are learning to calm everything, like all the processes. And it's crazy because when I sat down for the first time, I realized how crazy the mind is, just like nonstop thinking about something random. I couldn't even sit down for, 20, 30 seconds without thinking about something. Mm-hmm. And then you start to experience those things and you start to observe and start to realize, okay, but there is someone who can observe this phenomena. Who's that? Who is observing the mind? So all those interesting. We don't have to get into that too much, but the whole point at the simplest level is you get into meditation not because you want to perform higher. That's all, again, our tendency is to seek things and maybe do things that can improve, the performance, or, I can be more powerful or something like that. I personally didn't get into that because of the, performing better, or being coming up with stronger ideas. All that maybe could be an artifact that just present itself after you meditate for a certain time.
The idea of meditation, especially as it relates to one of the topics that's dear to you, artificial intelligence, makes me wonder how those two are connected. Like meditation, like having this cognitive dissonance in a way where you can separate yourself from the issue at hand to allow you to reach a higher plane of understanding, which is really what design is. You're trying to reach a higher plane of something. You're trying to change a condition. You're trying to improve something. Then comes AI, this new, and I want to talk about this because I know this is so important to your work. And quite frankly, I mean, we're all, as designers, if you're not interested in AI, you darn well should be, because it's affecting our industry and it's coming fast. The exponential growth in this field is kind of shockingly scary, interesting, fascinating. I mean, almost every adjective you can imagine is now applicable here with AI. So I'm really interested in diving a little bit deeper in your thoughts there, and how, especially let's start with how this almost deeply soulful state that you like to get in. I know that from working with you when you're solving problems. How did that state inspire you to think about artificial intelligence, and how does that maybe work with this state of deeper understanding on a problem?
Yeah, I'll try to also reflect on your question just before everything you said now, which is what's the relation between meditation and AI? I think it's a big question, so I'll try to address a little side of that. Mm-hmm. Meditation is very helpful to, again, tame the mind so that you can see reality more objectively. So you can see things more objectively. What's interesting, the moment you're able to tame the mind becomes a little more powerful in understanding the world around you in a more clear way. That's kind of the essence. And so that's super helpful, because when you think about AI, or you want to do an experiment within AI on design or something, it's really helpful to get into that state where you have a cleaner slate, and you're very open to the possibility, and you can connect to the capacity of AI at a different level. You're not just looking at potentially, okay, how does this prompt work? But you're thinking already ahead. What else? What does this mean? What's the symbol that I'm after? What's the concept that I'm after? How do I get that concept going?
But when I think about meditation and AI, they seem to be on polar opposite planes. In other words, meditation, I don't want to have all the chatter going on. I separate it. Whereas good AI utilizes simultaneous facts and information coming at it, tons of data, all at the same time. It's kind of working on an opposite platform as meditation. In a way, couldn't you say that?
Yeah, I think that's true. It's so interesting to look at the unit of human. So human brain, a single person, a human, and their capacity, their experience, their uniqueness. They're one of a kind. Each human is one of a kind, and there is no one human that's the same as the other. That's just mind-boggling and amazing. It's just a huge, crazy thing of this nature. Mm-hmm. And then you have AI. It could be a single machine, that has a composite understanding of phenomena or language model or however you want to define that. And it's gaining more and more understanding through mathematics, through algorithms, on, like as I said, composite understanding, meaning that it averages and it looks at everything that humans have created. And so it's really cool to kind of look at these two and contemplate what's the difference between the two. So the machine and us, immediate difference could be emotions. So you have human on one side and their emotions. We make a lot of decisions in our daily life based on emotions, how we see the world, how we experience the world around us. And then machine doesn't have that dimension. But the strange and crazy thing about the machine is that it understands the concepts in the ways that we cannot understand. You can make a little poem, ask ChatGPT to do this poem as a story that's 2-page long. And you can tell it, okay, so now make it sound 30% like Hemingway, 40% like Tolstoy, and 30% like my voice. Bam.
Right.
All of a sudden you have a whole new way of writing short stories that was never before possible. I can combine different authors with my voice and have a whole new category of novels. What does that mean? So just how disruptive this is. But going back to your question, meditation, I think the machine has just a way of processing. It just processes stuff. It is known. I can't even apply meditation to the machine.
But you know what? I kind of dig the idea of a machine meditating, AI taking on at least a little bit more humanity in a way. I know it's not sentient, and I don't know if it will ever be. And I know us humans have this tendency for over attribution, assigning anthropological things and actions to the machine. That's normal. We all do that. You wouldn't be human if you didn't do that. But I would sometimes like to see a computer kind of stumble, kind of think, kind of be a little bit more raw.
That's one of the aspects I contemplate quite a lot, the human imperfection and what makes us human.
And those are beautiful things in humans, I think. And the mistakes, like as speaking as designers, it's like when you try something, didn't work. All of a sudden you have this quirky little surprise that happens. It might come from somebody on your team that knows nothing about the project, and you heard them say something, and all of a sudden it go click, and you make this sudden connection.
I was always fascinated by the nonlinear thinking and the power of seeing things that are not obvious immediately. And that's what drives me as a designer on continuously discovering these new insights. And so to go back to imperfection, I was drawn to imperfection for a long time, trying to understand the power of imperfection. So in one example was I was in Italy back in early 2000s and have encountered Michelangelo sculptures for the first time in my life. And it's kind of ironic because I was born in Serbia, and that's like 1.5 hour flight to Milano and Rome. But I had to wait to many, many years later to start to live in the United States first, establish and earn enough so I can then fly back to Italy and see Michelangelo work. But when I saw Michelangelo work, was just so stunning and so earth-shattering and mind-shattering. That was a huge, huge impact on my work, starting from Sistine Chapel and later encountering the sculptures of a human being who did something that is just hard to comprehend, the degree to where Michelangelo went. And so then later, as I was walking through one of the museums, we have encountered sculptures that were not finished. And that was so powerful because it wasn't intentional that they were not finished. It could be a reason that he got hurried to another project, or, I'll attend that later or whatever. But the power of unfinished piece of rock where you can see the beginnings of something, the beginning of story, and then your mind is trying to wrap itself around what's remaining, what's the mystery here, and that imperfection of broken rock, refined and broken rock at the same time. So then I did a lot of experiments in the book on imperfection. And one thing too, why this is going to be relevant for our discussion later is the whole AI thing and the compositing of knowledge. I like to kind of use that term, like you average knowledge or you learn from many places. The algorithm is able to absorb an insane amount of data, but it doesn't have the intent. It doesn't have a character. It can act out characters, but it doesn't essentially contain a character. But and therefore there is not even an notion of imperfection. But just for kind of messing around a little bit, imagine now walking through the forest, and the normal forest as we know it as nature has made it. You walk through the forest, you're on a hike, you look at the leaves, they're all like beautiful and different, and it's amazing. Now just switch the little, flip the switch in your mind and imagine now that every tree, it is exactly the same. Every leaf is exactly the same. Little things on the ground are exactly the same. You would freak out and you would run away from this forest.
Yes, you would.
You would be so freaked out. Like, what the fuck happened here? But check this out. So you're looking at these things. You're like, this is fucking insane.
Yeah.
I use sometimes example of the beach. You go to the beach with pebbles. Imagine all pebbles are the same. This is us humans producing products. Sameness. So if you imagine that each pebble was the same, you would freak out. You could not sleep for the next 2 weeks. You will run away from that beach. You will never visit it again. And if someone told you, now then, the entire ocean is like this, you would be, I think, totally depressed. You'll be like, what? But when you think of AI, there is some interesting thing there that you can see within AI whether that composite knowledge can bring some of that sameness in a strange way. This super intelligence becomes almost just one flavor for all people, and it starts influencing our mind.
But on the flip side of that, all of that composite intelligence could also be applied. If you take it like a product thinking, you can imagine that every product is a little bit different from the previous one. It's the way that we used to craft product, one at a time, whether it's made out of wood or metal. And there is a certain charm to that. AI could be channeled in that direction. Or I think some of this sameness would be for the good of our society, because it's a more predictable, controllable, ecological factor that you can bring some sanity to. Because I see so much ridiculous product out there that's really not providing much value. It would almost be as if when you go to the beach, to use your nature analogy, I expect those grains of sand to generally be, about 1/4 millimeter in diameter. I don't know what a grain of sand is, but I'll guess 1/4 millimeter to 1/2 millimeter. If you walk down that beach and some of those grains of sand are an inch in diameter or a foot in diameter, I'm going to be kind of freaked out as well. So some of the sameness within using your...
It's cool because what you just said is really a nice illustration. It shows us how everything is connected in nature in a beautiful way, and how powerful the nature is, because it's not asking of you anything. Nature just gives continuously to us. It never asks for anything. But here we are, we come in, we think we're like the really cool, and we always see ourselves as ourselves and nature. That I think one of the fundamental problems we have is the way we see ourselves in the world. We see ourselves as superior.
Yeah, the sole masters of our universe.
Yeah, and then fundamentally that is, I think, one of the big problems, where we see ourselves as superior, and then let's help nature. But nature, I think it's so humbling, to understand how powerful nature is and the algorithms that are already there within nature. And that grain of sand, it's so connected with the rocks that are on the side of the beach, the little cliff that's behind that, the forest that's behind that hill. All these things are so connected and so well in sync. And so again, this journey, hopefully when we look at AI to kind of bring it back in, hopefully I'm super AI optimist. So just to kind of put the baseline there. But hopefully we can use AI to help teach us to redirect our efforts and help us figure out how can we create things that are better for our environment, for us as society, on all levels.
Oh, that's a big challenge because humans create AI, and you're asking AI to turn around and teach us. Now I know that's the promise because it's created by so many. Ultimately, millions of humans are making a contribution
Yes.
to the development of AI. Do you think that AI will ever have the masterful capability that something like nature has? Do you think we can get it to a point, or will it get itself to a point where it has that kind of interconnected, grand expression that nature has?
I love that question. There is a chance, if we look at nature, one of the things we can understand is that nature is a series of processes that go on, and they're connected in this chaos. It's a chaos of processes, and some scientists are trying to see this as organized, some are perfectly comfortable in seeing that this as chaos. And we know and use mathematics as our tool in science to understand these things. It is perfectly possible that AI, as I said earlier, how it understands writers like Hemingway or Tolstoy or any of the writers, it understands some patterns that we cannot comprehend. And it's able to emulate certain author. Now, it doesn't have emotions or preferences around that author, but it's able to emulate. Mm-hmm. Why do I mention this? Because it's conceivable that AI will be able to learn processes of nature and then go to the degree that we as humans simply can't. Our comprehension and cognitive capacity per single brain is not nearly as powerful as what AI can do. So if you think about that for a moment, that's incredible. I can have a computer, I can have a machine that's like billion times stronger than a single brain. And if it's trained in a way of positive approach, right? You can study the processes of nature and extrapolate new understanding, new insights that you couldn't see previously. Imagine this, like all of a sudden you have a radar and you can see things that you couldn't see before. You have X-ray, you can
Sure.
see inside the body.
Yeah.
You can all of a sudden see, and AI can summarize for you, okay, these are the main processes, but these are the other processes. So if we think of atmosphere, AI can maybe help, hey, you guys were wrong. It's not about CO2. The problem is like whatever other element. We have too much chlorine or we have too much this or that.
And the products might be physical hardware. They might be hardware plus some kind of element, whether it's digital or an operational model of sorts. And we're always trying to, I think we usually most designers aim to create a solution that's some form of betterment. We're trying to make a better experience, maybe make it easier, although I don't always like that term, making things easy all the time. We want to make things beautiful. We want to make things lasting and sustainable. How does, in your view, how does AI play within these objectives?
You can kind of split AI functionality in roughly 3 categories, automation, augmentation, and amplification. So in the area of automation, we all thought that AI is going to help us automate a lot of stuff. Funnily enough, and ironically enough, everyone who follows AI knows that that's actually not what's happening right now. It's going to happen. It's going to automate some stuff. It's happening here and there, but we thought that automation will be the first one. That's the low-level, mundane stuff. So if you look at these three, automation, augmentation, and then on top of the pyramid is amplification. You can draw a little vertical in, and the vertical could be understood as a vector from at the bottom mundane and at the top substantive. So at the top it's substantial work. It's your creative 10 minutes per day or 2 hours per day of the work that you love to do. And I know you love to dedicate each day to creation. And I totally appreciate how you kind of guard that time for you to create. A lot of people are not able to do that. So when you look at this, AI plays an interesting role in different levels. Then augmentation could be you need to post something on Instagram or like whatever, social media. So you're going to use AI to the degree that's semi-automated. It's going to give you some story. You're going to tweak the story a little bit and then, output something. And the top of the pyramid is the amplification. How can you use AI as an amplifier of your thinking? That is the area that I'm exploring the most. And the most exciting area when you think of the future. How do you use that tool for this cause?
So do you think it can, in that amplification, can AI create the actual pyramid itself? In other words, I can imagine an augmentation, that's easy. I can imagine AI augmenting a design solution by looking at various button shapes and sizes or a different arrangement of components.
Some of the legwork we have to do always,
which you have to do in design. And some of that can be fun, some of it can be mundane. Do you see AI ever getting to a place where say, our client could say, well, we've got this particular problem, our brand is waning, we need to inject this company with this new sense of purpose, create a line of products for us in the blank category, make them beautiful, functional, safe, sustainable, and cost-effective. That's building the pyramid. Do you think we could ever get to that point?
Probably at some point.
Damn.
Probably at some point, maybe like 10, 15 years, I'm not sure. The speed is so big.
Long.
It's not very long. I think we are approaching the new pinnacles very fast. And usually if you climb too fast, it could be a little dangerous for the oxygen. But it's an exciting journey. So it's a good question in terms of, okay, will it be able to build its own pyramid? In other words, you're asking, can AI completely replace us as creators?
A lot of artists are already experiencing this with Midjourney, where it's doing an amazing attempt at creating fine art.
I think it's important to put some perspective there, and I'm by no means an expert in any of this. I'm just exploring AI as a human being and trying to understand what can I do with this? What's the benefit here? And so I'll speak from some of the experience where you used to have paint, brush, and a palette, and you just start painting. We talked about it a little bit. And later we got tablets. You can just whack on tablet. You can sketch something. It was pretty amazing. Like, wow, you didn't really use any color, but you have the most colorful drawing on your screen, and you conceptualize something.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, then you have CAD, and then you become master of CAD and all these tools and all that stuff. But all of a sudden, now you have a machine or a service, but it's basically a machine. You get immediately into a concept that's completely either abstract or anything you want, almost anything you want, immediately. So we pause there for a moment. So previously, if we look back what we just said, you have to build skills for each of these things over the years. And you build your creative capacity to use those tools for some, outcomes. But here, all of a sudden, you're not painting with a brush. You're painting with notions. You're painting with ideas. You can combine things that you could never combine before. And it explodes your mind into what you could be doing. So
are you saying that...
Like never before, the nonlinear and creative thinking will lead the way here. It's whoever, if if your mind is too controlling and wants to do things how you used to do them in CAD, it's not going to be a fun journey because AI is so much more powerful than that. And so when you look at it, it compresses the time. I don't any longer need to necessarily know CAD or know how to put some stuff together. I could soon enough be using a web page and design something within 10 minutes. As I drive from Whole Foods back to home, you could design an entire product.
Well, then that does put us out of work. I mean, if that's the case, I would hope, and I would argue for the fact that the things which make us very human, I'm talking about these unprompted bursts of creativity, these moments of inspiration where you don't know where they came from. And maybe you could say that AI can do that too. Or the moment when you sense that there's a solution close. And the only way that you get to it is by using your distal end, your fingers, your hands, your body to connect with a solution. Like a lot of design is making. We're called makers often. That kind of, the disembodiment of AI is what maybe worries me the most. The computer is not alive. It doesn't understand this life form that we are designing for and among. We are designing things that people are supposed to use and find some benefit with. It's that disconnect. Good designers always show empathy in their work for the end user. Can AI finally get to the point where it can kind of simulate that understanding?
I think you're asking the question that's wrong, potentially. And
tell me how.
And this is why. So it's almost like if I entered the workshop and I have never encountered a 5-axis CNC machine, instead of thinking, okay, how is this going to be better than I am? I should probably think, how can I use this machine to make even better outcome with my own skills? Adding myself and skills to this machine, what kind of output I can have. In other words, why I think the question is wrong, the question should be, in some ways, what can you do with this machine instead of being caught up in the point of some kind of point of singularity where a machine can do everything. Because I don't think that that's necessarily a constructive point. We don't know where AI is going to go, so we can influence where AI is going to go. But the best way to influence, I think, is to stay positive about it and think about, if this is a tree that's growing, I want to make sure I want to direct this machine and wield it in direction that's positive, meaning that how can this machine, with your participation, create an amazing output rather than thinking of machine augmenting you completely?
Yeah.
Does it make sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. So it's a tool. It's just a tool. Yeah, I would agree with that because I don't want to replace this very, it's almost like a personal act design. It feels so real when you are creating. It feels tactile. You are in touch with your world. You are in touch with yourself.
It's tangible on so many levels.
It really is. And I don't know yet where I want to be augmented by AI in my process.
So the design process is so interesting as one of the things to study. Both you and I, we obviously work under certain processes. We developed our own processes. We continue to refine them. There's understanding why certain processes are in place, because they allow us to create a really good outcome for something that we are after. We are trying to figure something out, resolve the problem. We use the process. And what we need to keep in mind when we discuss this today, that this is only a little segment, even maybe a week from now or 2 weeks from now, when this podcast, it becomes already incredibly old because it's already 2 weeks old. It's going to be like, whoa, that was 100 years ago, because AI already advanced quite a lot from this point where we are on this day. to keep in mind that AI continues to improve. But at the current state, it's showing promise to amplify segments of our work, not everything. And when I say all these things, I'm only speaking from a perspective of someone who is observing this, someone who is experimenting with certain parts of the process that seem to me the most compelling at the moment, where you can get the most fruit, and not for practical outcome yet. Just to put that out there, I'm not, still I'm not using any of this for practical outcome yet. It is really powerful if used in a way that you're not drunken by AI, and so you just say, okay, AI, I'm going to do everything AI. I think the reason I mentioned your state of mind before you start doing these experiments is very important. What's your intention? What is that you want to do? Because you're bringing a human dimension to AI dimension. Okay, so AI is a machine. It can do a lot of stuff. But it is you with your humanness, you with your unique signature of your segment, your life, your experiences, everything coming into one. And you connect it with AI, and that's where the magic can happen. You can create outcomes that are outcomes that you personally could not do alone. AI cannot do it alone. And you realize that this new role is more of a conductor of thoughts. It's basically AI is kind of pushing you to even higher level of operation, where previously you would be sketching, you have an idea in your mind, bam, 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 and you sketch something, you sketch another, and you kind of have this nonlinear journey in your little notebook. Then you get to the CAD, you get to prototyping, etc. Here you have AI that quickly allows you to go really far. You can scale mountains in a matter of a few minutes. If you had 8 million designers right now and you asked them, hey, design a hairdryer, 8 million, they wouldn't be able to do it within 20 seconds. I could have design done in 20 seconds.
Yeah.
Decent design. It's not really perfect, but design direction is there. It's pretty good render. It's ready to go. So just to put in perspective some power reference. 8 million designers with the stopwatch, the best CAD people in the world, cannot do this in 20 seconds, in a minute, in 5 minutes, in a few hours. You can't.
Sure.
So just and be humbled by that. And then actually, but that's so amazing, because now I could be, 10x, 100x, 1000x my creative potential. What does that mean? Well, sit down and try and see where it takes you. You can combine concepts, mental concepts that you couldn't combine before.
Could it also be a case where maybe the human designer creates kind of the Rosetta Stone product for a brand? And almost every design could be broken apart into its disparate elements. You could say, well, these are the general proportions. These are the various details. We create product brand guidelines all the time, right? We create these things we call design language, right? A visual vocabulary, if you will, that helps bring together different kinds of products into a relatively similar expression. That's generally what a design language is. But I can imagine, to use your model of amplification and augmentation, the human creates the first of. Now the rules are set, and the world's your oyster from that point on. Let it create variants, children from that. Let it create the offspring from your creation. I can see that as a very good potential for AI.
So here, speaking of the struggle you said earlier, one of the things with us humans is the suffering. Life is suffering. There's lots of suffering around the world, and there are lots of things to overcome every day. Everyone has a certain thing to overcome. There's imperfection. No one is perfect. No human is perfect. And what's interesting, you have AI and that human artist or designer, whoever that is, who sits down in front of AI to work together. And there you go. You have the imperfection being added as a spice to otherwise synthetic machine. And with seeing these two entities, you can understand, wow, this is a next level of what could be possible. Now, going back to the design process we started, it's showing promise in some areas of design process where it can allow you to be creative in ways that you could not previously do. You could not generate so many insights into some of your ideas, where here now you can create hundreds and even thousands in a week of certain idea that you want to do, and it allows you to go so far so quickly. And one can argue, well, you just created many images, but I would argue, but you went much deeper. You already were able to emulate certain things and go much deeper in your understanding. Oh, this is really not what I want to do. Then you go back, but way more efficiently, way faster.
So the speed and the quantity are clearly unmatched. Your idea of 8 million designers, of course. But what about what I might even call soul being expressed through design? Because I think really good design does go beyond just solving a problem or kind of fulfilling a purpose, but it begins to kind of take on a soul. You can kind of see the mind of a designer in a product or an experience, or maybe even abstractly through the way a service has been designed. How can that be done synthetically? Is it through just the odds, the numbers? But you produced thousands of solutions through AI, and one of them's got to be good. Is it by chance? Could that be programmed? Or again, and do you think it'll ever get there to the point where AI can create something as moving as your Michelangelo example? Do you think
I think so.
You'll be able to walk into the Academy in Florence and see those Michelangelo slaves being born from the stone, being created by AI? Do you think we'll get there?
Fundamentally, humans are drawn to humans and to this imperfection. And what you defined as soul, there's something more, there's something greater in each significant piece of art than an average piece of art. But what is that? Because something was captured. When you see the piece of art, you see something much greater in it.
Yes, and sometimes you can't define what it is. I don't know how AI can define it either, but you know it when you see great design.
When you see a great painting, you're stunned. You're standing in front of it, and often this interest, just a very simple comment in my mind, wow, this feels alive. The painting feels alive, even though it might be done in the 15th century. It just feels alive. Or you see Pieta sculpture from Michelangelo, and you're stunned because it does feel like this is a living being.
Not only that, I feel like I can commune with the creator. Like, I'll never forget standing in front of one of Van Gogh's self-portraits, of which he's done many. And you look at this man and his bright blue eyes, and I talked to him. I mean, it was extraordinary.
You feel that you're connected.
Yeah, you feel like you're connected. Over 200 years, he made the leap to me, and he spoke to me. And I think maybe not to that extent, but really good design does that. When I look at a really beautiful piece of furniture or lighting, or it could be anything. It could be an electronic device. When I can look through that and reach the author, I can see what they were trying to do. I can see their commitment to something meaningful. It could be a message that's being sent through it, or just a feeling that I get. I cherish that, and I try to create that, in the work that I do. I know you do too.
So it's so funny you mentioned this, because it's at the core of my experiments. There is no really a very strong framework around it. All I want to do is be a normal human being, sit in front of the interface and start creating things that combine the world of art and design. So there is human and then AI, and look into these two ends. And when I say design, I'm thinking about more control. And when I say art, I see less control. So the creativity with more control, because design is usually always applied art, for humans, art of thinking, problem solving, and whatnot. Where art is all emotions and more out of control, meaning more like driven just by maybe some intuition or however you define that. And that's where everything explodes. It's like just insane. I mean, tears in my eyes. The beginning when I started to experiment with Midjourney,
Do you mean
I had tears in my eyes by the results I was able to see so quickly.
Do you mean where these two worlds collide?
Exactly. So I collide these two worlds and end up seeing things that like new planet after new planet. And when you discover these experiments, when you start to then continue to nurture some of these seeds, let's call them seeds, because you synthesize some certain visuals, and then you can choose to branch out in specific way from specific solution that you like. And you continue to branch out in specific area, you realize, oh my God, this in itself is a completely original work of art that doesn't necessarily exist. Oh my God, this object, I don't even know what this is. This is not design and it's not art. And I love it. It's so crazy.
You know, once you show me these experiments, I know that I'm going to want to do these too. Because I love this.
I can't wait to show you.
Yeah. I love this nexus point where design, which, has a fair amount of control. Design has to be sensible, smart, you could say even intelligent. There are often lots of requirements. It has to be manufacturable, etc. And there's a certain feeling that you have when you're solving a design problem. There's a state of mind, I guess.
100%. You become that. You become a problem, and then you resolve the problem.
Now, also, I do a lot of painting, and I have some requirements, but not that many. My requirements, okay, I've got a certain time frame. I've got my lighting. I know I'm going to be able to perceive at a certain time of day. I have my medium. I know the limits of the medium, in this case, acrylic or oil. I have tools that I use. And then enters the big thing, and that is, what am I feeling right now? Because I love abstract, because it's the hardest to do right. To get into an abstract state of mind that's where all the magic is in the art expression for me. Now, where I try to come together, I try to bring some of that openness and attachment to emotion in my design work, which makes me think much more freer than I would otherwise. And I try not, on the other hand, I also try not to bring all of those problem-solving constraints and natural proclivity to want to really work something out into my art, because that's where it becomes too prescribed and boring.
Yes.
And just plain banal.
Yes.
Because that's not what art is about.
Yes.
So therefore, what I'm saying is...
That's the clash, yeah.
Yeah, that's the clash.
That's the clash between design and art.
Right.
Design is analytical, and
Yes.
art, it is not analytical.
Right.
Well, one can argue, okay, you can probably argue differently, but I'll stay with this for now. So I realized when I look back at the work that meant something to people that I was involved with, that generated some momentum, that created a lot of success for businesses, a lot of success for people who used it. It was just really, excellent, usable product. Mm-hmm. The insights on how these products were designed and what they were supposed to become came when I was in a non-analytical mode of mind.
Yes, I agree.
And that's the most powerful state of mind, where you're not analytical. And so what I saw over the years, the problem is design is so analytical, so steady and process oriented and all that stuff. And in order to surpass that, you need to get in the state of mind that's non-analytical. So the crazy thing with AI, it allows you, I think once I show you some of these experiments and how you can do that, I think it's going to explode your mind. I think you're going to be like, where is Dan? Oh, have you not seen Dan for 4 weeks? He's like back in his house on the beach. He's doing AI.
Oh, man.
Meaning that what it allows you to do, you're humbled by, oh man, I was like seeing these things so narrowly. I see everything. I saw everything. I thought that I was seeing everything wide. Mm-hmm. But you're humbled by how much more your creativity can explode using some engine like this. And in this case, I'm referring to Midjourney as an engine.
This is an interesting...
But keep in mind, I'm not doing what everyone else is doing with Midjourney, which is, I'm not saying, hey, create the Superman and Spider-Man in this style of Marvel and whatnot. I'm using this as a machine in which I can influence with my own work, maybe even some art, maybe even some design or whatever, maybe some photographs, and then messing with its own algorithms.
I love the idea of AI being used to amplify not the work itself, but the way that you think about the work.
Yeah, both. All of the above, yeah.
It kind of forces, it liberates you.
Yes, it's liberating in many ways. You're like, what the, I can do all this crazy stuff.
And I think if the machine can do all that crazy stuff, what it should tell you as a designer is, I can do that crazy stuff too. Because the human mind has got so much more potential than we give it credit for, creatively speaking. People are way more creative than they know they are.
Exactly. I think that's one of the things that became humbling when you start using something like this. And even now, I know I'm just scratching the surface in those pockets of time where I can play with it. It's mind-boggling, and it's almost somebody was commenting on AI as an endorphin shot. I don't think that creators do art because of endorphin. Creator just does because we have this innate drive to create things. We just want to make the world a better place. I'm not saying for everyone, but I know for you and I that's our focus. And also I think when we look at art, and it's so amazing to sit at that edge before you turn this on. You're sitting at the edge and you don't know whether you're going to combine clouds with pasta, with, car tire and whatever the shit comes up to your mind.
Yeah.
Or who knows, just a black line on the paper, a couple of sketches and put that in and start messing around with it. You don't know where you're going to go, but it's completely liberating because it's not limiting you to anything specific.
Yeah.
And at any point in time, you can make it more tangible, less tangible, more abstract, less abstract. And then you can combine those outcomes into yet new outcome. So if you can see how this can be built on top of each other, all within 1 hour or like 2 hours.
Branko, I can see why you're so fascinated by this, because if I look back at your work that you did at Non-Object, before we were talking about AI, back in 2006, 2010, when you showed me a camera, your motorcycle, some crazy shit that I just thought the world of when you showed me, because it was thinking completely out of the box. I mean, my God, you named your company out of the box. Non-Object, none of us knew what you even meant by that. And here you are working in a medium that you could say is non-object. Is this are these experiments that you're doing now with AI, are they just an extension of what you have believed your whole life as a designer?
Yes. In fact, at the end of the day, what remains is the intangible. What remains, it's what we remember, what we keep in our heart, what we experience. It's not about the world of material. It's the world outside of the material. It's the relationship. It's the space between me and the objects that are surrounding me, me and the people that are in my life. It's that space that matters. And it was fascinating to me. What blew my mind is that the most recent discoveries in physics and astrophysics, like the highest cutting edge of physics, is the exploration of the invisible space. That's the intangible space in cosmos that we never considered to be the key to understanding cosmos. It's what's in between particles.
And we're still trying to figure out
Yes.
what dark energy and dark
we
matter
know
even
that,
is.
yeah, we call that dark matter, and unfortunately, because of etymology and the word dark, there is the dark connotation, but it's the unknown.
It's
the space that. So if you look into some of the work that I've been doing over the years, it's been many years since. I actually have to go back even more. Our father influenced my brother and I in a huge way by showing us Space Odyssey 2001 when we were 12 years old.
Did we ever talk about that?
Maybe we talked about it, but not here.
Because this is freaky. Because I saw that when I was a little kid.
Yeah,
in the theaters. I went to the theaters.
I didn't have a chance to see it in the theater. It was on the TV because it was 1982, and what was crazy is, oh my God, like the whole AI thing comes from that. Mm-hmm. Like the whole computer and human and space and the intangible space and apes touching the obelisk. Yeah. In many ways, I see us as apes touching the obelisk right now, and obelisk is the OpenAI, ChatGPT, or whatever other system that's out there. But it was through practice and just a lot of contemplation that truly at the end of the day is the relationship that you have with things around you, is the space that's in between you and things you're experiencing where magic happens.
It's the space and it's the energy that is maybe at times, oftentimes even with design, I know it sounds strange to say this, but it's almost more important than the matter itself.
It's more important, and I used to lose a lot of people before when I was explaining these concepts. I'll use a simple example. So I don't lose you. If you're listening to this right now, hopefully I don't lose you right now. So imagine a car, right? There's a car that's well designed, and you buy that car, you love the car, and you open the door, sit down. I know how much you used to drive a lot of Porsche cars and stuff. Mm-hmm. And the build, the precision, the quality and stuff. But what happens? What's actually going on there? It's a human being driving this thing. It's not really about what kind of leather is on the wheel, what kind of texture is on the plastic or metal. It's the combination of all of this and what kind of experience you felt when you sat in that chair, in the seat, when you grab that wheel, and when you drive. The mind and your body and soul summarizes this in a specific feel.
Yeah.
And the more you drive this thing, the more relationship you're building with this object. And it's not really about the object in the end. It is your experience that this gives you.
Yeah. I've always believed that. And I think that really good design, ironically, the design itself kind of disappears when you're using it. Like when you talk about like driving a Porsche.
Yeah, it disappears.
What is that feeling? Some of you may have driven one before, but you become so involved in the experience itself that the object is just support. It's there.
It's an enabler.
It's an enabler. When you're finished with that experience, you step away from it. You can admire the thing itself, but it's not the true purpose of its act that is
exactly. So
the
together,
admiration.
It is you and that car that became something else together.
Yeah.
And you driving that car is something greater than just that car or just you walking by that car.
I've been so fascinated about how design at its core is about the formation of energy. It's in our brains. It's just pure energy. And we're giving life to, or almost a consciousness that you are imparting or imbuing in an object that you are now mass producing in the case of an industrial designer. But a really good design then goes from its material state back into an energy state by it giving its soul back to the receiver, to someone else. So it's you give to it and it gives to someone else. I love that notion. And when you realize that as a designer, that's kind of what your role is, it makes you think about your solution in a completely different way.
Yeah, and then when you think of nature, nature is so fascinating if you start to dissect, I don't know, a tree with apples or like tree with bananas or any kind of fruit, mangoes. Like, wow, it's such a perfect product because, it's hard for me to explain to you. I can write a book on how mango tastes, but you can only like depend on the language that I put in that book. But it's never the same. Once you try mango, you're like, whoa, your mind is blown. But that was a non-language experience of a product, which is in this case fruit. But then nature designed it so well that after you ate the mango, everything else gets decomposed. There's no negative impact on the planet. So it's a lot of inspiration that we need to draw from nature, even though it's like right here in front of our eyes. I think we were abusing our industrial capability and capacity for so many years that is another element to kind of weave that back into the space that we're discussing now, which is the experiential space.
So true.
To really finally see things we do as part of nature. And I think, again, going back to AI, hopefully we can also add that element. I wanted to just mess around a little bit with some, we don't have to mention it, we could, on how can AI, some dramatic changes in people's life. You come home, like 10 years, 5 years from now. Hey, can you play some jazz? I wanted to sound a little bit like Miles Davis, but add a little bit of hip hop to that. Maybe De La Soul, a little bit, but kind of make it a little less loud and play for an hour. And also after dinner, I would like to play a video game. But this time, can you make it look like Mario Kart? But I want it to be plot like Doom Eternal and maybe add a little bit of Star Wars in it. And I'll be ready like in 1.5 hours to play some games.
I don't think you're going to have to wait 5 years for that.
I think this requires a lot of compute. But imagine you are sitting down there and it just comes up, and it's real time.
Have you heard some of the AI music?
I did.
Yeah, you can tell that it's AI music.
It's still early days, but you can imagine that, like, what could be fascinating, and I don't know how. That's maybe not cool because it's still learning from all the humans who have done all this work and all the music that's been created. But you could imagine AI creating music sounds and music, something that sounds like music, but maybe it's not music because it's a stream of sounds in ways that you couldn't previously do. You can say, I feel a little bit jazzy, a little bit this way, and then it creates this kind of vibe.
Yeah.
It's a totally different form of...
It reminds me of how NASA supplied some of the signals that it gets from a black hole. Now, there's no sound that travels through space, but we do get enough information through wave patterns, particle wave patterns through space. Whether it's in the infrared or ultraviolet, we know there are certain things happening. You can take those frequencies, and if you apply them to sound, NASA has actually provided, or somebody's supplying it to NASA probably, the sound of a black hole. And if you haven't heard that, it is the eeriest, weirdest thing you have ever heard. And it's like, when you look at an image of a black hole, it sounds like what you kind of want it to sound like.
I think it's the deep fear of the unknown.
Yes.
Like you have no idea. Like you don't have in your database, in your DNA, in your software, there is no data on that. And you're like, what the, right?
Kind of like, I think probably when music was starting to be discovered, it probably wasn't invented. Instruments were invented to reveal music. I think music is kind of one of these things like dark matter. It's just,
Yes.
it is what it is.
And it's such a direct form of art. One of the
Yes.
beautiful things about music, we all hear exactly what the piece of art is. There is no,
Sure.
you can interpret it, but it's very direct. There's this one thing, that's the composition and the song that we're hearing. And it creates a lot of emotions.
Now, imagine the first humans that heard or created music. They probably felt like they were just on frontier land, right?
Yeah, like drumming against
Yeah.
some piece of wood or something.
Yeah, or when they started to create melodies, when they figured out how to create, simple flutes or, recorder type instruments. I love going to the frontier of anything, whether it's design or art, and in this case, AI. And let's riff just quickly about, like, what will that frontier look like? What will shock us about AI, the way that our ancestors were shocked by something like music or the discovery of principles of light, like the real, like, shocking revelations, the things that we might say are already there, like dark matter, but we discover them in AI. What does that look like, and how would it? Because that's where this gets really interesting. Right now, AI, it's so much in its infancy, and we can. I mean, where's this going to go? How is it going to shock us?
I think we're in a stage of moment of apes and obelisk from 2001. Currently, if I think of AI, we are the apes trying to touch the obelisk. You remember that part in the film?
Oh my God, unforgettable.
I think this is, but what's kind of ironic with that is that the apes are the ones who made the obelisk, but we don't know. The question you're asking is hard to answer because the change is so big that the change has already happened. We actually have no clue of the impact of that change. So it's like almost like invisible explosion that already happened, but we're going to learn what the true repercussions or implications are. And it's going to become maybe more obvious in the next 2 years, a little more obvious, but we definitely need to discuss it at the international level on how to introduce these technologies, how to use them. Becomes very scary very quickly when you look at the large language models like ChatGPT and systems like that. To unleash that worldwide, it sounds very, very irresponsible somehow. From one perspective, it sounds really dangerous because we don't know how some people will use it. But then when it comes to design and some of the tools we discussed today, there's a different degree of confidence there. It's a very powerful thing for sure. People will be afraid, what happens with the education. What do you teach designers in school today? That's another question we didn't touch today. We didn't touch on that question. It's a pretty huge question. And it goes across the board of entire education. What do I teach kids in elementary school?
Yeah.
Knowing that now I have ChatGPT. How does that change the system? We don't have an answer to that. But we have the powerful machine. They can do a lot of powerful stuff. And convenience is the king and the danger. So how does convenience play? What role convenience has in our life in the next few years? How is convenience going to impact our trajectory as society, as someone who populates this planet and who is in charge of a destiny of this planet in many ways because of our actions? So there's some really difficult topics to figure out before we even understand what's the impact of AI.
I'm actually worried about that topic of convenience. It kind of relates back to my comment about designers always seeking to create easy. And easy sounds a lot like lazy to me. And I want people to learn through their struggles. I want people to feel that moment of anxiety that we talked about in the creative moment, where that's often where your genius is revealed. Boom, you're up against a deadline. you've been struggling with something, you've taken in all of the advice from everybody around you on a particular problem you're trying to solve, and all of a sudden it just happens through struggling. And
There's so much beauty in that.
there is beauty in that. And think about your most memorable learning moments in your life, even when you were a kid. It's the things that you worked really hard at understanding.
And overcoming
And overcoming
something really difficult.
And the creative process is so informed by those early learnings that you have. Being a young designer, my God, I wouldn't replace any of those moments when I cut myself or exploded something, literally.
Yeah.
And so how will AI affect that in education? I'm a bit concerned about it. I guess people talked about that when the HP calculator came out, and they said, well, long form math isn't even relevant anymore. And does anybody really know how to do math? I mean, certain mathematicians do, obviously, but how relevant is it? We've got these machines that do it for us. So if there's generative design that does a better job than I can as a young designer, well, why do I go to design school? Why should I do this?
Yeah, like if you're to draw the graph, there is always this graph and this idea of progress. And even prior to arriving to the United States, I was always fascinated by this idea of progress. Have we really progressed? What is progress? Are we that much different than the cave people who, if I summarize some of the early days of humans and, some old villages millions of years ago around a little fireplace in a little hut or something, and then look at the apartment today, there's still a little fireplace, there's still a little, four walls or, room, sofa and stuff. Have we really evolved? Is it, there are a lot more similarities with what we did in the past. But there is the question of progress and what truly is progress. And we like to believe that we are progressing always positively. And are we? I'm not sure what positive means. There is always a good chunk of negative aspect together with positive. It's the dialectic nature of our world. Mm-hmm. We just don't know all the negatives. It's not usually where I spend my time. I don't really spend time in thinking of negatives. I always think of the positives. But with AI, we need to think of the convenience and the dangers of what AI does to our mind. Mm-hmm. Whether, how will your cognition be impacted? Your learning. What will you read books? If you have an amazing AI that can tell you everything, will you read books? How is this changing the way you experience the world? Mm-hmm. Is it dangerous to have little glasses for little kids, for kids to go around and just wherever they look, AI will tell them what they're seeing? Mm. Is that better than just walking around and exploring by yourself? There's so many interesting things to ponder, whether the ultimate technological advancement is progress. Mm-hmm. Or no, or is this the trajectory that you want to take?
I'm not sure about the qualification of the trajectory, but it is what it is. And humans have always created. We've always been crazy explorers. We do really stupid things as a result. All right, but we keep going.
Yeah, we keep going forward. Yeah.
And AI is just another form of that exploration. We're gonna do it. So, people say we shouldn't be doing this, or we have to slow down its development. But good luck trying to slow down creativity. People are going to try it. I don't know where it goes. Is it the natural next step in the evolution of man to express ourselves this way? I think I would probably say yes.
It's been a dream of humans for a long time. I was with a group of developing artificial intelligence early concepts back in early 90s in Belgrade at the Science for Materials and Technology. At the time, we worked on expert systems for architecture. Mm-hmm. So these were, early days, parallel computing, just very early days. And you would have software be designed in a way to help you create better solutions in architecture, as an example. And I think that this is only a natural evolution of our efforts, and the outcome we have today, it's what we wanted to do for 50, 100 years. I mean,
Yeah.
sci-fi authors talked about this, many, many times. And now we have it in front of us, probably more powerful than we thought it would be at this point in time. That's the big surprise. And it's becoming more powerful rapidly, way more rapidly than anything else. And I like to always refer to AlphaGo curve. Go and check out the AlphaGo curve on how it learns and becomes supermaster at Go. And it's good to ponder on that curve because you realize how that curve works. And it's pretty insane hockey stick where pretty quickly it goes really high up and surpasses anything that humans can do, which is, I think, again, fascinating, but we have to be careful.
The fear, of course, is how do we keep up with that? Because there will be consequences that we don't know how to respond to it.
Yes, and one of the things that's cool is that focused AI is good. You can direct it to certain areas, and that's proving to be very helpful. So at least there are some more clear understandings around application of AI in certain specific areas of science or certain activities of us humans. So I think looking from that perspective could be the way to grow AI into our society.
Do you think, first of all, so to conclude, do you think AI is going to make this field of design more enriching, more satisfying, ultimately better, and more rewarding to individuals?
I believe so. One of the things we didn't reflect on that I really appreciate about AI, it allows many more people to try design, to experiment with art. People who otherwise would be too afraid to try. So one of the phenomena of AI is the inclusion aspect. All of a sudden, a lot more people can access this world of creativity in ways that you couldn't do before. People differently are able to now play with creativity in totally new levels. And that is super exciting. That can give a lot of creative happiness to a lot of people beyond the circle of designers.
I think that could be very positive, especially when I consider how our educational system kind of beats the creativity out of these kids by the time they graduate from high school. If AI can help to unshackle individuals in the way that they think.
Yeah. And to kind of just add one more thing then is you ask, okay, so about AI and design, I think in the end, I see this tool as an expansive tool, to expand our capability. And I think that's why it's going to be beneficial.
What's pretty awesome is the way that your optimism about it has, just in the last hour and a half, or however long we've been talking, because it just seems to have been timeless, how you've made me more optimistic about it. Like I'm still learning. I'm still skeptical. There is a bit of a fear of the unknown, I think. And, I read a lot about it, but I'm really interested in seeing your experiments. Let's post some of your experiments if you want.
For sure.
Alongside the release of this podcast so that people can understand probably what we've been talking about.
I might have the web link to give you at some space.
All right. And then finally, do you think this will make people happier? Well, can it affect happiness? Because
yes.
And the reason I asked that is because you mentioned, the challenge of life, right? We're still kind of sitting in chairs in front of fires, and we enjoy our moments, and we enjoy our food, and we enjoy our play. And that really hasn't changed in, hundreds of thousands of years, probably. So here we are I feel like I think we're on the cusp of a gigantic change with AI. But I want to be careful in how I say that, because scientists and technologists have said that at every big turning point. And some of them come to be and others don't. You know, when we discovered oil in the great industrial age, we're on the cusp. And yeah, we were. But did we really improve things? Did we make the planet better? No, we made it worse. Are we on the cusp of something, and will it make us happier? I don't know yet. I don't know. It's really it's a neat thing to ponder. What do you think?
I think resounding yes, and on two levels. On one level, it's expanding a whole new dimension of creativity. If you think of this as at the very top of creation, it's opening up a whole new layer that we could not have done previously with anything, because we didn't have ability to do it. There was no AI that could handle these things. And there is no known limit at this point in time. Already now, there is no limit to how far you can go with creativity. And yes, it gives you happiness. Each morning you play with AI and Mid-Journey and things like that. It just gives you that incredible creative shot, and then you continue about your day. And at the same time, I think AI is going to do a unique other thing. It's going to help us appreciate craft and appreciate human touch and imperfection of simple human scale things that humans do, from making a meal to making a little craft piece to making a painting to making something simple. I think that's what's going to happen. So it kind of almost amplifies our appreciation for what human can do alone. And then here you have on another spectrum a whole new degree of you working with this incredible composite machine.
Wonderful. Branko, I can't thank you enough, man. Really enjoyed this discussion. Looking forward to seeing your discoveries around AI and other things. Really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Danny. It's been a pleasure, and I'm humbled by a chance to share any of these thoughts with you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening to PRISM. Follow us on whipsaw.com or your favorite streaming platform, and we'll be back with more thought-provoking episodes soon.
PRISM is hosted by Dan Harden, principal designer and CEO of Whipsaw, produced by Sarah Lears. Mix and sound design by Eric Buell.